Are you tired of hearing mental health from a superficial view and you want to hear about realistic views? Well, you come to the right place. A space where healing is central, but also normalized. Your hosts, Danica and Myra, who are in the mental health field, will explore topics that help promote healing in your everyday life. Through our podcast, you will get the real and the work to focus on your healing. Welcome.
We are beyond grateful for our very first sponsor, Bloom and Plume Coffee, a Black-owned coffee shop located in Echo Park, 1638 West Temple Street to be exact. They're open Monday through Sunday at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Bloom and Plume offers coffee, fresh juices, pastries, cool waffles. You must check it out, and savory toast, not to mention they have vegan options. The vibe and aesthetic is unmatched. Be sure to check it out. Special thank you to our second sponsor, Multicultural Therapists. Find a multicultural therapist.com is a psychotherapy directory specializing in providing an opportunity for people from different cultural backgrounds to find a therapist who shares their experience. Their goal is to assist in connecting individuals to culturally competent therapists. They offer individuals an opportunity to make their therapeutic connection more comfortable. Making the decision to seek therapy can be difficult. Finding a therapist who meets your cultural needs can be challenging. They understand and acknowledge that the specificity of your culture is important. Your life experiences are a great part of who you are, and they like to acknowledge that. Find a Multicultural Therapist has created a revolutionary psychotherapy directory that provides everyone, regardless of your cultural background, race, spiritual beliefs, ethnicity, sexuality, an opportunity to connect with culturally competent therapists who understand without judgment.
Okay. So, hey, you all, we're back with episode 8 of Black Women Healing Pod, and we have a guest, Joy. So Joy, we want to start off with a random scenario. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Random scenario. Let's say that you had a choice to go to any planet or any other universal dynamic or whatever in the entire universe. You can go wherever you wanted to. Where would you go? Or would you go anywhere?
That's a funny question because I have a running joke with a few of my friends that when I get annoyed, I say I'm moving to Mars. And so just because that already exists, and I've already said it enough times, I'm just gonna seal the deal with this one. I would likely want to go see what's up on Mars.
What you think is at Mars?
I tell myself this story, and I really do actually believe this on some level, that there are just like alternate universes, right? So all the other planets also have life, and they're living, you know, in whatever they think is the only world where there's living beings as well, right? And maybe not thinking of, because the thing is, we have the luxury as Earthlings, right, of seeing these kinds of cartoons and sci-fi things where aliens are coming to invade our planet and all of that. And so it's sort of on some level like plant the seed that there's a possibility that there's life on other planets, right? Because we get these like fictional stories. But if that is in fact the case, right, and there is life on other planets, are they, you know, watching programming, seeing things about us come, you know, invading their planet, you know? So I don't know, but I tell myself the story that there are alternate universes and things going on other planets that may be parallel to what we're doing here, or maybe have nothing to do with it at all, but it's still very relevant for whatever, you know, universal understanding they have. So I'm just gonna go with Mars because I say it all the time. I'm out of here. I'm going to Mars.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. So today's guest is Joy K. Madison. Joy is an MFT, a clarity coach, and a speaker. Joy graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Kinesiology with an emphasis in exercise science from California State University, Northridge. And she graduated with a Master's of Arts in Clinical Psychology with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. and she is currently pursuing a doctorate of psychology in marriage and family therapy from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Joy has specialized in training and certification for trauma-focused CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. She's a former owner of Eat, Sleep, Sweat, a functional fitness brand and studio based in South Central Los Angeles. Joy is a founder and creator of the Club of Hearts, which is a subscription-based online community for personal and professional development. Joy has mentored over 100 children, teens, and young adults over the past 2 decades. She is a collegiate All-American swim athlete and reader of at least 24 books per year. Joy describes herself as a bridge, a light, a shovel, a translator, and a vessel, which speaks volumes of her service given through a holistic lens. And we are grateful to have her today. So, Joy, I'm going to dive right in and ask you to describe how you began to find your passion in helping others through storytelling.
Oh, man. I don't know that I recognized it as that until very recently. So I guess I'd say that that's been something I've been doing my whole life. Sharing, connecting, being with people is just my favorite thing to do in general. And I realized that we are connected through our stories, right? We meet people because we have shared interests and hobbies. So we run into them at places where we can do those things, right? And we meet people according to shared values, right? So we may meet them at our, spiritual or religious centers, things like that. And so the way we meet people is through the ways in which we're connected, and we learn about those connections through storytelling. And I think the more I realized that, the more I began to give more attention to developing that as a skill set to really connect to as many people as possible, recognizing that storytelling is a universal language.
That's dope. That's dope. So can you describe what a clarity coach is for our listeners and how you found this calling or how it found you?
Yes. Clarity coaching is actually, or the title of a clarity coach is something I made up myself. And the reason why I made it up, just the short version of that story, is that as I was transitioning and closing down my fitness studio and moving into mental health full time, it was a tough transition for me because, as you said in my bio, my background, my undergraduate degree was in kinesiology, exercise science. And since I was a child, I've been an athlete my entire life. And since I was a child, I had a vision and a dream to have my own studio and my own facility where I could train people and support athletes, navigating through their careers, which is, so this having the studio and doing that was a dream realized, a lifelong dream realized. And so when I was being called to evolve beyond that into something bigger, though I knew it was the right choice, it was still a difficult one. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is that what made it so difficult is that I had began to define who I am by what I do, right? So you say, when people say, well, what do? You say, I'm a fill in the blank, right? I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a therapist, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a dancer, I'm an artist. And you started with I am, right? So the question is, what do you do? But then we answer with I am, right? Instead of I do, whatever the thing is. And so what happened over time, what I was realizing, because I was having such a hard time transitioning, even though, again, I knew it was the right next step, I was asking myself, why is this so difficult? And what I ultimately came to is that I had become so tied up, right? My identity, who I am, had gotten so tied up in what I do or what I did, that when the calling evolved, right, and the thing I'm supposed to do, when that evolved, it was like losing a part of myself, moving and no longer doing that thing anymore that had been such a huge part of my life and part of how I understood myself, right? Like an athlete is an intersection of my identity, right? It's no different from I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm an athlete. Like that's right up there with that for me. And so that was like tough to transition. So I said to myself, whatever I do next, it has to be big enough and broad enough to encompass however I will evolve, whatever that will look like, so that I don't have to go through this ripping apart again when I'm moving from sort of, that distinction of what I do and who I am. So I created Clarity Coach because when I thought about my skill set and I thought about how no matter what I'm doing, whether it's podcasting, whether it's writing, whether it's a post on social media, whether it's speaking engagement live, and even in session with my clients, one thing that I offer is clarity. I can always ask you down question down to the bare minimum core root of whatever the thing is. And then from there, offer the clarity that is necessary to rebuild, right? And so because I know that no matter what I'm doing, that's the sort of common denominator, I just decided I'm going to call myself that. And then I can, because I'm making it up, I can decide what my job description is.
Yes.
So that's how I arrived at that place. It kind of just was is really a way for me to avoid the pain of that title thing going, happening again.
That's dope.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you spoke on like intersectionalities and how like we are and we do. It's so many different things to us and just one or two things. It's several different things, but your bio, your incredible bio, one of the things that comes up is the Club of Hearts, and I just want you to explain to our listeners and also me and Myra, like what is Club of Hearts and the impact on the community thus far.
So again, that's one of those things that fits under the umbrella of what is a clarity coach? Well, a clarity coach is this, right? And so that sector of it is my online workshops and courses, the Club of Hearts. And so I got the idea summer 2018, and essentially we shot all the content in the next 3 or 4 months, all of the content for 2019. And so the concept for this year was that it would be a subscription-based service that would allow people to get access to a range of different resources and materials, including workshops, workbooks, and even live online virtual meetings to discuss various topics that are relevant to people who I call zennials, right? People born between like 1978 and like 1984, 85. Like a small micro generation that I feel like we were raised to think and believe one thing, and then when we entered the world and tried to play the game by those rules no longer applied. And so a lot of us have had to redefine career and relationship and some of the key things that have been milestones and cornerstones for past generations. I feel like this Zennial generation, we sort of had to like recreate it for ourselves. And so we're simultaneously sort of drawing and building the blueprint, right? Like we're drawing it out and then also building the structure. And that's a heavy load. That's a tough thing. And so I created the Club of Hearts as a place for us to build community around the work of being our best selves and our relationships with our finances and our careers, just in our bodies, right? Caring for ourselves. What does it look like? And offering emotional intelligence courses, all kinds of different workshops and courses to support that process for it. And so that's really what it is. In 2019, 2020, I'm switching the format up a little bit. So it's still the Club of Hearts, but instead of being a new workshop every month, it's going to be a curriculum with 4 different modules, and we'll build up curriculum so that people can do self-guided workshops on their own time when they want to invest in their personal development, learning more about emotional intelligence, learning more about how to attract and build healthy relationships. I have a course called the Money Mindset Makeover, where it looks at what is our relationship with money, right? Because we hear all these things about how to budget, how to save, and when to invest, and all these things. It's like, have we considered that a lot of people can't do those things because they have unhealthy relationships with money, either because they grew up in poverty, because we've been told that money is the root of all evil, because we ourselves have experienced lack, and so the conversation around money is just a little bit weird. There's so much going on there that I think we get to deal with before we start talking about spreadsheets and budgets and some of the practical things about money.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, the Club of Hearts, it sounds like it's a little bit of everything. It sounds like anybody can get something from it. And so we want everybody who's listening to make sure you click the link in Joy's bio. We'll tag her on the photo when we post it. Go ahead, Myra.
I just want to let y'all know that this is something that's very budget friendly. If you go on the website, there are levels to it. And what you'll notice about each level is you're really going to get something out of it. Although the highest costing one, you get more. But each one definitely offers something, and I would definitely push for y'all to check it out because I'm reading it and there's something on here for everyone when we're talking about the Club of Hearts in particular.
Mm-hmm. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
So the next question is, okay, Joy, can you describe to us what the process of beginning this journey of storytelling looks like, or even if it has a look to it for folks?
Yeah. So as you mentioned in my bio, I'm an MFT, and I talk a little bit about being trained in trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy. And so one of the things that we do is create what's called a trauma narrative, right? And so I would share, if I were going to give steps about storytelling, especially around this idea of like healing and even connection, but more so specifically around healing, I would follow the same steps that I give my clients when we're doing a trauma narrative, right? So the first place to start is just with the facts, particularly if you're telling a story about something that you personally lived through, right? Just start with the facts. What exactly happened? What time of day was it? Who was there? Where were you? What were you wearing? Things like that. Just start with the facts, right? And this is sort of a way, again, if we're talking about using storytelling as a healing tool, you want to start there because you don't want to be sort of so triggered that you can't get through the exercise. There is a lot of healing available through telling your story. So start with the facts. And then from there, you move to adding your thoughts and feelings, right? So what were you thinking when whatever the thing was happened? What were you feeling? Maybe even thinking about some of the nuances about, I remember seeing this out of the corner of my eye, or I remember hearing, whatever, things like that. You want to start adding those layers to the story, right? And then you're gonna dig a little bit deeper, right? Start to think about, maybe what have the effects of that experience been? What vivid details do you most remember? What have you learned? Just things like that, right? So if you're gonna think about like how to tell this story, those would be the 3 steps, right? So start with the facts, then layer in your thoughts and feelings, and then dig a little bit deeper for like the wisdom or the lesson or the takeaway from the experience. And then you want to make sure you just wrap it up, and sort of make sure people are clear about the significance of the story and, in their lives, but also the meaning of the story for your life. Right. And so those will be like 3 things I would say if you're looking at elements of storytelling, specifically for the purpose of healing and transformation.
Yeah, thank you for breaking that down like that. I think that sometimes we do, when we start talking, we immediately start thinking about our opinions and our judgments, things that have happened after you talk about the facts. So I think that's huge what you just said. So thank you for breaking it down.
It's so cool to hear you like talk about this because today I was learning about TFCBT and I was doing the same thing over and over. So it's like now hearing you like talk about it in like this way, it's like, okay, now everything's starting to make sense. That's why I was taking notes.
It's starting to like sink in.
Yeah, definitely. Can you describe your views of the difference of like storytelling, like speaking versus storytelling through writing?
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. I have like a court TV, like I love those, like watching murder trials and things. It's odd. But I was watching one today and the girl was doing her testimony and I said to myself, I was like, she is reciting something that was written that she memorized. And the reason, and so you're asking me this question, and the reason why I could tell that is because, to the point of the question, writing and the language we use, the way we formulate our sentences versus when we're speaking to someone is tends to be very different. Because with writing, we have to be more colorful and we have to sort of bring people into whatever the environment is or whatever the story is we're trying to tell. We have to give enough context and detail that when we're speaking, we don't necessarily have to do as much because whoever we're speaking to can hear our voices, or maybe even if we're standing face to face, see our facial expressions, things like that. And so there's other things to give context where our words, we don't necessarily need them as much. Whereas in writing, all you have is a two-dimensional sort of page that's in front of you, right? And so the writer needs to write enough about what's going on, not just in the interaction or whoever's talking in the story, but also where they are. They have to give all those contextual clues, right? And what I notice in terms of just even just like sentence structure, for instance, in written form, language tends to put adjectives first, right? So say for instance, like if I were trying to say like, oh, I was fumbling my phone, and so I was about to drop my phone, but I grabbed it right quick, right? So like if I'm telling that story, I might say something about like how I felt as the phone was falling, right? So I would give some sort of descriptive narrative or even adjective or something before, right? So it'd be like immediately I tried to grab it, as opposed to my phone dropped and I was trying to hurry up and get it, right? So does that make sense? Like the subject sort of goes first in spoken language, but in written language, it seems like the descriptors go first to sort of pull people into the action of what's happening. And then it's like you describe the scene, but you want to pull them into it with something that's going to like give them something. Like, so if I say immediately, you know that that's with some fervor. So now you want to know what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that tends to be the difference that I notice from, and especially when I think about if I'm going to go speak somewhere and I write my speech, I write it one way, but then when I get up to speak it, it's always sort of flip-flopped a little bit. And rarely do I ever look at the card, because that throws me off, because my written voice is so much different from my spoken voice.
Yep. It makes me think about like even like body language too. Like how you said, like if somebody was telling me that they immediately dropped their art, and if they were speaking and they just said, oh, I dropped my phone and I try to get it, they would probably do something like showing they immediately try to get it, where I didn't even need that descriptor because I actually see body language. So
exactly, you see the body language, you see all of that, and so that gives more context that so your word choices will be different because you have all these other sort of elements to work with.
Deep. That's deep. Okay, so our last question is, what do you think are the challenges that the people or folks face when using storytelling healing methods?
So one thing is, what I'm thinking of specifically is sometimes it can go one of two ways. They either don't tell enough detail because it lives so much in their minds that they forget that they need to try to paint the picture to whomever they're telling the story to. They may not give enough details. They may, like, again, because they can see it clearly in their minds, and so they're not thinking of the value of saying, and I was driving by and there was this tree by my house that I would always stop at. Like, they didn't think to give that because it's like, that's just the tree by their house that they always stop at. They never think to add that, right? So that can go one way, or the other way is that give too much detail, where it becomes about the content of, and then this happened and it was my right hand over here, and then I did. You give so much detail because you're trying to paint the picture that it becomes a heavily involved in the content, and whatever the message is, it's hard to take away because you're losing me with all the inertia, right? Extra words and things. And so I guess finding that balance of what's the, especially if we're again talking about telling stories as a form of healing, what's the pertinent information? What do I need to purge and release? What do I need the people to know? And what's important for the takeaway, for the message? And then giving just enough of that to keep people drawn in without going over the top.
Yeah. I think that most definitely makes sense. Sometimes we just start talking and we be rambling and we're talking just to talk, but not talking to really, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
release. Um, so we talked about a few different things today. We usually do takeaways.
Okay.
So giving our listeners something to practice or if they want to, like really incorporate it into their lives. So what would
Mm-hmm.
you say the takeaways would be today, Joy?
That's a good one. Well, I'll stay, I guess, in the excuse me, in the vein of like uh storytelling, and I'll recommend an exercise that I've been doing a lot lately in my personal life, but also a lot with my groups that I facilitate. It's an exercise called pages. And essentially, what it is, I don't know if you've ever heard of a brain dump, but essentially, what it is you take a pen and paper and you begin to write whatever just the whatever stream of consciousness. It doesn't have to make sense. Stories don't have to be connected. Punctuation, spelling, grammar, none of that stuff matters. Just write whatever words come to your mind, and write and write and write and write and write. And what that does for me is a couple of things. One, it makes room for new ideas to flow because I get that stagnant energy moving through me. Ideas that have maybe settled in my mind or whatever, like I'm sort of stirring them back up again. So that's one. Two, if you choose to go back and read those morning pages, what you might find is some inspiration.
Hmm.
You might find some inspiration. You might find um, some ideas, so because a lot of times things are in your mind, but there's so much
Hmm.
floating around that it sort of gets lost or cluttered, or you can't really form a full concept of it.
Hmm.
So getting it out and then looking at it, it gives you a room to sort of step back and make make more sense of it. So I would recommend that
Yes.
exercise.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for all that you share with us today. I'm really gonna push for people to check out your website because it's dope. I think it's amazing.
Good. Thank you so much. I have some new courses coming out. So if you're not already, definitely stay close to my Instagram because I'm doing a revamp of Do Your Work, which is a relationship course looking at how you can use your romantic and intimate partnership to help you reach your sort of maximum self.
Hmm.
Um, I'm revamping also the money mindset makeover, which I mentioned earlier, and I'm releasing a time management course and an
Hmm.
emotional intelligence course about what can your emotions come to teach you. So in the next couple of months, and certainly more coming up in the next decade. Wow.
So thank you so much, Joy. We enjoyed having you. Hope you have a good night.
Thank you. I appreciate you all. Thanks so much.
All right, so I hope y'all enjoyed this week's guest. And in the essence of talking about storytelling, I'm going to challenge you all to, therapy isn't always affordable for everybody. I know that there are some cities that do offer it for cheap, but I know that's not the case for everybody. So, in the essence of storytelling, I'm going to challenge you all to practice some storytelling. And what that can look like, I have just a few tips for y'all that I've used with clients, I've used for myself. So, one of those can be you can vlog, as our last week's guest kind of mentioned, she touched on vlogging. And what you could do is you could just record yourself just talking, kind of like expressing yourself. Because, this guest, she talked about how there's a difference in writing versus, talking. So you can do that and say that for yourself, or you can share it with friends, whatever. Something that you can also do is you can write to a sense of yourself that you're feeling in the moment, in the week, whatever's coming to you. So, for example, you could say, "Dear angry self," and you will write a letter to that self outside of yourself, so that you're not attaching the angry title to yourself, and that can be a way of just simply telling your story. Or you could do it the good old-fashioned way and call up your homegirl, homeboy, whoever, and just talking to them. So I'm not gonna share a discount for the week. Actually, that is a discount because that was some free game I just shared with y'all. So
Hey.
I just plug y'all. That's something I usually charge, but yeah. So try those things out. I want to hear about how they went for y'all, and now I'm gonna pass it over to Danica.
Okay, y'all. So we usually do like a book, article, movie, that type of thing. But as I was listening to Joy speak, it just reminded me of this podcast that I've been listening to called Ear Hustle.
You hooked?
So my super right, we hooked. Me and Myra, we hooked. So I work at a program that is AB 109. So all of my clients are on probation. So that means they just got out of jail or prison on early release of some kind. And so my supervisor told me about this podcast. I'm thinking like, nah, it ain't about to be that good. Y'all, this podcast is so good. So it's called Air Hustle, and I'm just going to read a little excerpt about the podcast. So it says, this podcast is a partnership between Nigel Poor, a Bay Area visual artist, and Erlon Woods, formerly incarcerated at San Quentin State Prison. It was co-founded with former San Quentin resident Antoine Williams. So they literally are storytelling. Like, you feel like you're in the prison with them. Like,
yes.
I kid you not. It's so real. And you just gain so much respect for them, but also just like, I can't explain it. You have to listen. So this is a great form of storytelling, and you can tell that all of the people through the podcast that they are feeling relief to share their story. So check it out. And of course, if you haven't bought your ticket already, you need to buy it. Actually, right now, pause and go buy it, or keep it going on your phone or whatever you listen to. Go buy the tickets, y'all. So we having our Black Women Healing Pod launch party. It's going to be November 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. It's in Los Angeles. Once you buy the ticket, we will reveal the actual location, and that's for safety for our guests. We'll be having giveaways. We're going to have some self-care activities. Some refreshments will be provided. But the event is open to everyone, and it's only $8. Buy the tickets.
All right, y'all. Well, that is it for today's pod, and we look forward to seeing you at the launch party because you have no choice but to come. So we'll see y'all all there, and that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning into today's podcast. Be sure to drop a comment on any of our platforms or even shoot us an email. We will be back next Monday. Make sure to tell a friend and tell a friend. That is it for today's Black Women's Healing Pod.